Hey pickleballers, and welcome to another episode of the PickleBros podcast. As always, thank you for your likes, comments, and subscriptions, and shout out to today's sponsors, Pickleball Gangster and Carbon Pickleball. Our code is still good, so go buy a new carbon paddle, get yourself a carbon hat, use code PickleBros for 10% off. Today's episode is in light of a lot of the news that many have heard and many haven't heard, and it is what is wrong with pro pickleball. Now, one of our things was we didn't want to discuss the pros. Paddles, pros, drilling videos, that wasn't our jam. We wanted to talk pickleball, but it is newsworthy, and I think in terms of what we're trying to do for this show, today is a good time to discuss some of these issues. But before we get into what's wrong with the pros, and there's a lot, we're going to go into what's your beef. Stolp, kick us off, bro.
Yes. Okay. I've said this before. First of all, love what's your beef, and I can come up with anything at all times about anything beef related. So my beef, I've said this on this show before. I've got a real big beef with the name of this sport. We call it pickleball. Why are we so focused on the male genitalia? Why don't we just call it penis testicle ball? Like that's seriously what it makes me think of. And I'm like, out of all the sports in the world, like if we want to be taken seriously on a sporting platform, we got to start with the name, folks. We got to find a way to petition the name pickleball out of the sport of pickleball. So when we're talking about what's wrong with the pros and all this thing, let's start from the top. Let's rename the sport to something more non-male genitalia related. That's my beef.
Jesse, what's your beef?
My beef is tournament doormats. These are people who allow themselves to get walked on at tournaments. I'll give you a couple examples of people who are and aren't tournament doormats. So one example was my wife was playing in a tournament. This was last year. And somebody came up and said, "I'm the ref, but I want you to know that I'm friends with your opponents. Don't worry, it's not going to bias me, but if you have a problem with it, you can request a different ref." And my wife, to her credit, said, "Yeah, I'd like a new ref." But I think a lot of people wouldn't, but I'm really glad she got a neutral ref for that game. And then here's another example. More recently, there was a gold medal match in a local tournament, and the participants were offered the opportunity to have a ref for that match. And one of the players said that he didn't want a ref, and that player had been in a previous match at a different tournament, had been called repeatedly for footfalls. So it would have been in the interest of the opponents of that player to have a ref. Clearly, this player was worried about footfalls, but the other players kind of didn't want to seem like they were being difficult, so they just said, "No, that's fine. We don't need a ref." Well, if you're in a tournament, you should be playing to win. You're paying money. You should play to win. And if your opponent doesn't want a ref, you probably should want a ref. So stand up for yourselves, people.
That felt personal, Jesse.
Yeah, that was definitely going after Tim there. Tim was not the guy who didn't want a ref. Tim was a guy who did not force the issue of having one. Jesse, you did say something. Normally we don't respond
doormats,
right? Normally we don't respond too much to the beefs, but you said something about your wife wanting a new ref, and I don't see how I would not have had a problem with it. As a guy who's officiated at a very high level, I had good relationships with athletes, coaches, parents. Like, I never let that get in the way. So I almost feel offended that would be a problem. If the referee comes up to me and says, "Hey, here's the situation, but I'm going to be unbiased," dude, green light. That's a really good verbiage from a ref. So I'm curious, your perspective is odd to me.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like that's just asking for trouble. If you've got a ref that's friends with two of the players and doesn't know two of the other players, why not just get somebody that doesn't know any of the players?
Yeah, because you don't want to be difficult. You want to be a doormat. Tim.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Tim, what's your beef?
Okay, well, this one's also personal, and if you're out there listening, you know it's about you. So we played a match recently, and yeah, it was one of those days that a lot of my shots happened to hit the tape and trickle over. And my opponent in this case was doing a full body eye roll every single time. Like, woe is me. I'm so much the better player than you. You're just getting lucky because the ball keeps hitting the tape. This is illegitimate. Yada yada yada. He wasn't saying any of this, but his body language certainly was. And I'm just like, I let it fuel me, and I played some of the best pickleball I've ever played over the next game and a half because I was so irritated by the full body eye roll. And I just think we need to accept that, look, if you're trying to hit a good shot, you're trying to keep it low. The ball's going to hit the tape and trickle over a lot. You know what? That doesn't mean that it's completely accidental. It means that you're trying to hit a good shot.
Smart shot.
And sometimes that'll happen. It happens a lot. It happens with a lot of good players. It happens on the PPA tour. So I guess I don't mind because I let it fuel me and I played really well, but it did irritate me. And that is one of my freshest beefs.
Nice. Tim, one of my favorite things about you is how much better you get when you get angry or pissed off. We're going to partner with each other in this upcoming Duper League that you host. And I'm like going to make up some crap before every match just to get in your head and make you get fired up. Like, did you hear what they said about you, Tim? And just be a complete lie. So it's now time for my beef. And this is my beef, but I'm going to pass it off to Stolp because I loved his energy and his vitriol and his anger over this thing. So you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
I'm going to pass it over to you, brother.
Oh, okay. Well, there in the world of pickleball, there are procedures during open play or recreational style play with some sort of paddle up system. You go to any court outdoors where it's free for all. You put your paddle up, you get a foursome, and then you wait your turn. Well, there's a neighborhood court with 6 or 8 courts in our neck of the woods that doesn't have this paddle up system. So some amazing like Batman of our community who saw a need for something that would just better our community. I think one day there's no paddle up system. The next it was like it showed up in the night, and it was this beautiful thing with like a gutter system and bungee cords, and it was all set up to where, hey, now we can have some organization and everyone understands what's going on, so there's no confusion and it's equal for everybody. It just added a process, a very needed process. Well, come to find out, soon after this was put up by some heroic Batman in our community, some loser tore it down and threw it away. Like, what's the point of that? It got me so fired up. I saw this through pictures and video. It wasn't firsthand account because I would have probably gone around screaming, but some hero in our community, if you're out there, I just want to say thank you for what you did. I'm sorry the people don't deserve you for what you did to try and help out everybody in our pickleball world with this paddle up system. Sometimes people cannot have nice things, and that fired me up. That really fired me up, Ian. So if that's what you're talking about, I hope it is. That's really grinds my gears.
That's what I'm talking about. And the aforementioned Batman may have gone out there at 9 p.m. at night in a thunderstorm with rain and lightning, and tried to do some good for the community and improve a system, because the courts you're mentioning have their rule. This blows my mind. They say it's a first come, first served basis. And when you get on the court, limit yourself to 1 hour. Are you joking? There's 8 courts. So if you have a 9th group show up, then you have to wait for an hour to have a court. It's absurd to me. So whoever this Batman fella was just trying to improve something, not even by his own subjective opinion, but general pickleballdom has agreed that the paddle up system is the way to go. And I was so shocked when I discovered that it had all been ripped down and thrown apart. I can't comprehend the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, whoever did that, I hope all your balls go into the net and all your serves are out. And foot faults are just a common thing with you. I hope you lose the next 1,000 games you play.
Indeed. All right, guys, that's some great beefs. I love it. Before we get into the topic, there's one more sort of recap I want to go through. Last week, Tim and I did an episode on mixed with my wife Rachel and his sister Nicole, and we had the first genuinely controversial take that everyone didn't just have an opinion on, because most people always have an opinion on something we're talking about here, but they chimed in. The chatter on Facebook and even in the texts I got was pretty intense. So that was the take of my wife.
Refresh us of the take. Refresh us of the take.
Feeling uncomfortable with me playing or finding a higher level woman to play mixed doubles with. And she articulated it beautifully. So if you guys haven't seen that episode, please just go to the episode before this one. It's maybe 2/3 the way through the episode. I believe Jesse has it time stamped. She articulates it so beautifully. But basically, when you're in battle with someone and you're striving to accomplish something, and you've got adventure and there's adrenaline and accomplishment, that bonds you. And in the terms of men and women, that has ramifications. And I think my wife very appropriately was uncomfortable with me developing those sorts of bonds and adventure and synergy with a woman. We've seen plenty of examples of these things going wrong, but I'll pass that over. Jesse, why don't you go first? Because you and Stolp weren't on the show and didn't get to respond. So I want to give you guys opportunity to respond what Rachel said.
Yeah, I liked what she said, and I wouldn't want my wife to be playing on the regular with some other dude. Like, I want to be forming those bonds with her, and she feels the same way about me. But it can get complicated. Ian, in your case, there's a pretty large skill gap between you and your wife, and you've talked about how that poses a problem. You could play 3-5 with her and probably do pretty well, but you're nearly a 5-0 now. So playing 3-5, that's gonna be
Look
pretty
bad.
It's bad optics, and if you play 4-0, you guys are gonna get killed. You've done it and you got killed.
She got hit in the face by a ball, like first game.
So either you really can't play with her. So what does that mean? It means no mixed doubles for you, which I feel stunts your development as a complete pickleball player. So in your case, I think maybe she should make an exception and allow encourage you to play with another woman that's not her. But in general, I agree with her. I think if your wife plays and she's kind of roughly in the same stratosphere as you in terms of skill level, play with your wife.
Yeah. Stop.
Yeah, first of all, shout out to Nicole and Rachel, who came on last week to do that mixed doubles episode. Very, very well said, well put, so well articulated. Just, they say a lot smarter things than I do. And the way she worded it, it sounded like, a novel, like, oh, we're going on these adventures and we're going to do this and that. And it's going to lead to this like love story. And for me, even as much as I thought Rachel stole the show last week, she was an A+ character last week, 100%. I don't buy her take, just to be honest. Like, my thought is, first of all, this stuff happens. Like, we all know stories of people who play with the other gender and it leads to romance. My individual thought on it is, if you are going to cheat on your spouse or your significant other, it's going to happen whether it's in pickleball or something else. Like, you're going to have opportunities to be around the opposite sex and do those type of activities, whether it's going to be in a mixed double situation or it's in a work or life or whatever. Like, if you're seeking stuff like that out, I think it's going to find you one way or another. So even though it was super well said by Rachel, I just don't buy into it. I think playing mixed doubles with someone, who complements your skill sets on the pickleball court and helps you succeed in general is what I look for in a partner. So that's just my thought. I thought Rachel did a great job, but I'd push back a little bit.
I haven't heard that take yet, and I find it reasonable, actually. Tim, do you have any final thoughts on it?
Yeah. So I think happy wife, happy life is the rule of the day. But it's kind of easy for me to say too, because it kind of passes the buck. Like, I'm not really making the decision. I don't feel any kind of personal way about it. I just know that if my wife was bothered by it, that's not a battle that I'm going to pick, especially since I don't love playing mixed doubles. But I played a lot of mixed doubles. I try not to stay with one partner exclusively. But I will say this, as I'm sitting here thinking about, how would it feel if the shoe was on the other foot? My wife was a better player than me, and she wanted to go play with somebody else. I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it. So that would make me a hypocrite if I was totally cool doing it as the better player. Like, oh no, it's fine. It's nothing's going to happen. You're not, there's nothing to worry about. I'm just going to go play. We're just friends. It's all about competing. I would expect her to deal with it and be cool with it, even though I'm not sure I'd be cool with it if roles were reversed.
So my wife is an ultra marathoner, and training partners at ultra marathon levels are tough to find. A couple of years ago, when she was training for the Pikes Peak Marathon, she partnered up with a male who was similar pace but pushed her, and it was like for training, and they're on the trail for 8 hours. So I was thinking about that too when I was articulating my thoughts around, but if she was on the court with somebody else, how would I feel? And my first instinct would be like, no, that's not okay. But then to think of it in context of what she does and how she does it and in our lives, like, I was totally cool with that, and it made her better. And there was, and anyways, so I hear what you're saying, Tim, but also have seen it in my own life to where, yeah, she partnered with a male to help her train, and it actually made her better. And so I hear what we're all saying, and there's no easy answer, right? It's just it's a good conversation.
Yeah, I love all this discussion. I find all of your takes reasonable and rational. As a family, we have made a decision, and we're going to stick with it for now, which is me not playing with a mixed partner. If I end up becoming legitimately competitive, Rachel has already said that that's a discussion she's willing to bring back. Like, if I push 5 plus and I need to get a mixed partner to actually, you can't limit yourself. She says that's a discussion to have. The only thing I wanted to add in, and I didn't see this coming, I didn't think it at all, but there were a decent number of people suggesting, oh man, sounds like Ian's been cheating on Rachel, or sounds like there's some infidelity in his past. And I was so taken aback, and I was so offended. So I just want to throw it out there to the world. That is not the case whatsoever here. My wife is my one and only all my life. There are zero issues in our relationship when it comes to that. That is not what this stems from. I think it stems from my wife being a logical thinker and a woman who recognizes the potential pitfalls of the world. Stolp, you make a good point that if those things are going to be there, they don't just happen in pickleball. They happen everywhere. And you have to be constantly on guard with it. But in defending my own honor, I was really surprised at how quickly. I mean, maybe that's just the internet.
People, that is the internet, dude.
Yeah,
for
people
sure.
came at me and they were like coming. I was like, dang, I got to say something, because that is not the right impression.
No, Rachel, again, thank you so much for coming on. Nicole too. I thought it was a great discussion, and it was such an easy listen from a fan's perspective last weekend to hear and all the thoughts from that conversation. So I'm glad you pointed stuff like that. The internet's the internet, dude. Haters gonna hate. But so glad that they came on last week.
Awesome, guys. All right, it's time for us to discuss why pro pickleball sucks. And we're going to seriously, I love saying that. I love saying it. Got the alliteration to flow off the tongue. And we're going to start with, I'm going to recap to the best of my knowledge. And listeners, this is a very fluid situation. I have absolutely no contacts. I've listened to 3 or 4 podcasts sort of in the know to get my information. But for those of you listening to us who have no idea what's going on, this will be a decent recap of the drama happening between MLP and PPA, so Major League Pickleball and Pro Pickleball Association. So they're obviously competitors. Steve Kuhn, Tom Dundon. Steve Kuhn is MLP, Tom Dundon is PPA, and they're both trying to change pickleball.
They're the owners of those two
They're
organizations.
the owners,
Okay.
and they're trying to change pickleball for the better. Both of them have different visions, but they're working for the prosperity of the sport. And so they came into a partnership. PPA had created something called Vibe Pickleball, which was the competitor to Major League Pickleball. Major League Pickleball is more of a team format. PPA is more of a tour format. PPA wanted to compete with MLP. They created Vibe. The partnership was that PPA was going to crush Vibe, make it go away, and in return, they would get 20% stake in MLP. This, to my knowledge, was agreed upon months ago. It was set. It was done. They just had the new draft of MLP like inside of 2 weeks ago. Everything was good. Well, the MLP, and by the way, I'm going to speak as I am offended personally by their lack of good faith acting here, but none of this is illegal, right? So this is purely my opinion and how I feel about the matter. I'm not speaking on anything legally. The MLP goes behind the back of the PPA, reneges on their deal, captures a bunch of players without the PPA even knowing it. They signed like 20 players, and there was some deal with the board where one of the guys at MLP said, if I can get 20 players to commit, will the board cancel the deal with the PPA? He did it. The board gave him approval, and MLP, boom, it's just they've cut off PPA and they're going to forge their own path. This happens during the PPA tournament in Kansas on mixed day. So the players are just hearing about it. The PPA is just hearing about it. The MLP owners didn't know that this was going to happen. That blows my mind that a business decision was made at the highest level of MLP, and the owners didn't even know that this backstab. Some of them called it going to war, backstabbing. Those are actual quotes from other owners. So this just was really ugly. Of course, the PPA had to respond, and so they start throwing out letters of intent. They can't actually draft full contracts yet. It was too soon, but they start throwing out letters of intents to players. Which player's going to go this way? Which player's going to go this way? No one, big money's getting thrown around. We're talking about people who have never medaled in a PPA tour are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars offered to them over multi-year deals. Like we're talking $200,000 or $300,000 a year for guaranteed 3 or 4 year contracts with the MLP. The PPA offers, and I can say this number because Tyler Loong said it himself on his podcast, they offered him $5 million, the PPA.
No. He was kidding.
Do you think he was joking when he said that?
Yeah.
I watched
$5 million for Tyler Loong? No. That was a joke.
Okay.
Shots fired at Tyler Loong.
I did not take it as a joke, and with the big money that they're saying being thrown around, I thought it sounded legit. So perhaps we'll throw an asterisk on that. I do disagree with you, Jesse. I watched that. I thought he was deadly serious. But even if he was joking, these players are getting big money. And it seems like a cluster right now. It's ludicrous. No one knows who's going to go where, what's going to happen to the future of the sport. Steve Kuhn likes rally scoring. He likes the team event. The PPA and Tom Dundon want to have the more traditional tennis tour environment. And it's just an arms race. And I don't like what this is doing to pickleball. It's driving wedges. It's dividing things. I'm personally frustrated with Steve Kuhn because Duper is a disaster. And now whether he's going to win out or not, and he very well might because he's a billionaire and he's good at business, looks like the MLP. If I had to take hedges right now, I think the MLP is going to come out the winner on this. But, everything he's involved right now, he's shaking up the sport into his own vision, which I suppose if you have the influence to do that, go do that. I don't like what he's doing to the game. I don't like the it's all being unshackled and ruffled. It doesn't really affect what we're doing. We're still showing up to Lifetime and playing, but I think it's bad optics. So anyway, let's start just your guys' takes on the drama here. Is this good or bad for pickleball? Jesse, go ahead.
Well, it's a crucial inflection point in the game, like beta versus VHS. You don't probably know what those are, Ian, but
No,
it refers
I've got no
to videotape
He doesn't even know
formats,
what Back to the Future is. All right. So
videotape formats 50 years ago, or, before there was PayPal, there was a competitor. I don't remember the name of it. It's an all or nothing situation. Like one of these things is going to probably disappear, and the other one is going to be the future of pickleball. So that's why these billionaires are putting a lot of money into it. And I think the drama is, well, dramatic. I think it's fascinating. But as far as the sport for the rest of us, probably doesn't really affect it. And I don't really enjoy watching pro pickleball much, so I doubt I'll watch it either way.
Stolp, do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, and maybe by what they do over the coming weeks and months will influence you, Jesse, to change your mind about pro pickleball. Here's what I think. Ian, you said so many really like smart things and well summarized stuff, and I literally fell asleep. Like I could care less. Like everything that was just mentioned, this fight between MLP and PPA, like what does it mean for me? Don't care. All I hear is there's a billionaire versus billionaire trying to make the sport better. And where I come out on it is if it does, great. I look forward to that. But this, like Jesse said, is a major inflection point into the sport. And I think we're going to dive into these topics a little bit because what I look at is, okay, we're if you look at the major sports, MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, pro tennis, whatever, golf and PGA. If you're talking about scaling up with that, there's a lot of things that need to be addressed in pickleball. A lot of things, and they're glaring. Like we are addicts to the sport of pickleball, and two of us on this podcast could care less about pro pickleball. We don't watch it. We don't care. You know why? Because it's boring. It is freaking boring. So the thing that they need to address, and this is part of all this money conversation, is you need to make this sport watchable. You need to make it more entertaining. And I think we've seen some strides made with ESPN coming on board, CBS Sports, and different things like that. Like they're trying, and they will get there. Once money gets there and you get smart people involved, they'll get there. But we need to make it watchable. The sport also needs to figure out how to attract young, entertaining talent. Who's going to be the LeBron James of pickleball? Who's going to be that person to take this sport to the next level? Because right now it's Ben Johns. I love the guy. He gave me a shout out during my recovery, but like the dude's got 2 first names and is super boring to watch. Like I'm sorry. Like he's super technical and wins everything. I love that about the guy. And now all you're watching him for is to hopefully lose. Like you want to see him lose and the next one to come. We need to have like a Super Bowl event. There needs to be, and maybe there is. This is how unversed I am in the sport of pro pickleball. There needs to be something on the calendar to where everything leads up to a date, and then the best will be crowned. And like a Super Bowl type experience where it's a big deal. Everybody in the whole pickleball world gets around it and we're talking about it. Right now, it just feels so divided, fractured. There's this, there's that, it goes on forever, yada, yada. And all in all, we need to attract corporate sponsors to help pay for these things, to do all the things. And all the money's coming, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But those are my initial thoughts when I hear it. I fall asleep, but there does need to be addressed.
Yeah, you said 2 of you don't watch it. I think all 3 of you don't watch it. I'm the only one who gives any attention to pro pickleball. But Tim, piggyback off what Stolp said. Give me your thoughts.
I think Steve Kuhn should hire Stolp like now to fix whatever's wrong with pro pickleball. And there's a lot wrong with pro pickleball because this is the most interested I've been in pro pickleball since we talked about Annalie Waters throwing a temper tantrum after losing. If there were a reality show about the pro the Pro Tour. I'd probably be more interested in that than watching your typical weekend tournament with the pros. I just think it's fascinating. As much as I am into sports, I watch football and basketball and tennis. I still watch tennis. I play a ton of fantasy. The sport that I love the most is pickleball, and I couldn't care less about the guys that play at the level that we're all aspiring to get to. How does that make any sense? Now, I know that there are people that do like watching it. My sister, who was on last week, loves watching it. She watches it every Sunday with the kids and her husband. They love it. They don't like what Steve Kuhn is doing with it. They don't like the MLP format, the team format, the whole draft and all that stuff. And I just sit back and think, I don't know. I think there's a huge disconnect because I am such a fan of the sport. Why do I not like watching this product? And it's not even about the personalities. I think there are enough personalities in pro pickleball, and it's not about the upsets. Like I happened to tune in and I saw the Johns brothers lose. So I would have thought that, okay, this is it. Like, I'm sick of watching these guys win. Here they are, they're losing. This will do it for me, right? No, I still couldn't care less. It didn't do anything for me. So that's not it. I don't know what it is. I think a lot of what Stolp said made sense. One of the things that I like about tennis is that you can watch, however much you want to watch throughout the year, but you know that the US Open is going to be a big deal. Wimbledon's going to be a big deal. The French Open's going to be a big deal. The Aussie Open's going to be a big deal. Golf, same thing. It has the majors. I don't know what's going on with the PPA. It's just a different tournament every week. I don't know why I should care more about this one than the last one. It's the same cast of characters. I don't know anything about them. Yeah, they have their podcast. They have their Twitter feed. I still don't care. I don't know why. I don't know what there is to do about it. But if Steve Kuhn is the guy that has all this influence and money, I mean, we can't go to the polls and vote about this stuff. So someone's got to be making the decisions. It's not all that different from other sports. There's someone that's calling the shots and they're talking to people and they're doing the research. This team thing sounds intriguing to me. MLP sounds intriguing to me. Ian, we are planning on 2 different team events right now, and it's irrespective of what MLP is doing. I didn't know about any of this till you guys started talking about it.
Well, the thing that gave me the idea was knowing about MLP.
Well, dude, it was my idea. I didn't know about MLP or anything. I think good minds think alike, and Steve Kuhn has the same idea going on. I don't know, but I thought it'd be really cool to have a draft, have really play up the team aspect of this, which I didn't know existed. I've been talking about this for like the last year. Like, let's do something like this. So that piques my interest. I don't care that MLP can't get the absolute best players in the world. I don't care about that because I wasn't watching them anyway. So I think something needs to change. I would love to be able to be a fan of pro pickleball because I love pickleball. And if I'm trying to get to these guys' levels, I'd like to be able to care about what they're doing, right? Otherwise, what am I doing? I don't know how what's happening at the very top affects me. I run a duper league. So, Steve Kuhn and duper, there's a connection there. But, like I said, I'm already talking about exploring the team aspect. Maybe that's down the line. Maybe rally scoring is going to happen pretty soon. I've never even played a game that's rally scoring. But you know what? At the end of the day, there's still a pickleball net and a pickleball and a kitchen and a paddle. Like, as long as we have those things and those are constants going forward, then I don't really care. But something needs to change because it's a bore, a monumental bore.
Let me ask you guys, is pro pickleball boring because Ben and Annalie win everything, or is it just boring?
It's boring. I just saw the Johns brothers lose, and I didn't care. It didn't do anything for me. I think it's just boring, and I don't know what the solution is for that, but if we're going to throw some team aspect into it, that might help.
Jesse, why do you find it boring, and why do you find it boring?
I do find it boring. In fact, if I'm having trouble sleeping, I'll sometimes literally watch pro pickleball, and it'll help put me to sleep. Part of it is, yes, that Ben and Annalie are so good. They win every time. So in that sense, maybe shifting to a team format like Steve Kuhn has envisioned would be helpful. But I think I agree with Tim that even in a so-called thrillingly close game, just doesn't do it for me. I don't know. I watch track and field. That's my lifelong, sport passion, and I love watching that. But yeah, pro pickleball just isn't my thing.
So it's funny, Jesse, you mentioned track and field. I mean, I think golf is eminently boring. I know Stolp likes that. Baseball's had a bad rap as being boring. I am captivated watching freestyle and Greco and even NCAA wrestling, and that has been hailed as eminently boring. So Stolp, seeing as there are sports out there that are proclaimed as boring, and yet they have vast followings, great loyalties, how can pro pickleball become more watchable?
Geez. Well, yeah, and I touched on this. And smart minds need to come together. And I think this is the point in time we'll go back to and see, it's the old Netflix versus Blockbuster, where one of these is going to be the Blockbuster and they're going to get taken over by Netflix, and Netflix is going to change the landscape like they have. And pickleball is going to be the same way. So once we get an understanding of the lay of the land, I think it's addressing some of those things. Like, okay, let's look at our TV contracts. Who do we have? How do we attract a national audience? How do we get somebody like Jesse, who is super addicted to pickleball? Start there. How do we get your avid pickleball player to get interested into the sport? Then how do we expand that to a national audience? And how do we expand that to a young audience? And then how do we get the young audience to start participating? Then how do we get that participation from the young audience to turn into the next Ben Johns or Annalie Waters? Then who's going to dethrone them? Now we've made it captivating for Tim, because Tim watched two brothers lose one time and wasn't into it. But now if you get the new name on the street, who is a young up and comer from a story that was an underdog tale, now you're interested. So those types of storylines need to happen, and how it starts and finishes is with money. And so some of these things come from corporate sponsors, some of these things come from billionaires, some of these issues come from just making it accessible nationwide, partnerships through Duper, Lifetime, all these types of deals that people like you and I don't have any influence on. I think those decision makers from the top, the Steve Kuhns, the Tyler Durdens or Dundon, sorry, of the world. You got that reference, Tim?
Yes,
Thank you.
I did.
Okay. They will start making these decisions that impact it. So it's actually just hoping and praying that they do the best thing in the best interest for the sport, and hire people that hopefully have, the mindset of some of those things that I talked about to do. Because now we're starting to get in that space too, where we're talking about paying players, say millions of dollars. Maybe it wasn't 5 million, but say we're in that space. Do you know what that's going to bring to the game? Are we going to talk about that? Because all these different sports that I talked about, the major levels, people find ways to cheat and get themselves in once money's involved. So Jesse, you had your hand up, but there's a big box of worms, and that's how I do it. I'd start from that baseline of how do we get a national audience interested into this game?
Well, I wanted to address your point about the monetization of the sport, and really big money coming into it now for the first time. Not just for Ben Johns and Annalie, but some of these top 10, top 20 players are looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. How will that affect the sport? And it's going to be profound. And we will look back at the pre-Kuhn era with nostalgia, I think. Now, every popular sport follows this trajectory. Tennis used to be amateur, right? Like 100 years ago, it was, I assume, solely amateur, and probably baseball and football at one point were amateur sports. And then they became professionalized, and everything was about attracting, advertisers, like you said, corporate money, and gambling, right, is an add-on to all of this, and there's been a push for that. I think PPA has a formal partnership with some gambling company.
By the way, can I just jump
Um,
in real quick? Line calls cannot stay with the players. if gambling is involved in the sport. It just ended on either. It can't. They're going to have to figure something else out.
Correct.
Yeah, maybe there's a technical or technological solution to that. I don't know. So have you guys all seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Please tell me you have.
Is that where every time a bell rings, Angel gets his wings?
Yeah.
I
It's not
have
a
seen
wonderful movie, but yeah, I've seen it.
Stolp, have you seen it?
Don't
a
worry about
classic.
it. Just
Tim-
don't even worry about
Tim,
it.
it's oh my gosh, Tim's
Ian,
Tim's a
no.
curmudgeon and Stolp hasn't seen it. Yes,
Okay,
Dude, isn't
Take
it
that.
black and white? Isn't it in black and
Like
white?
it.
No one's got time for
take
that.
it and like it.
there's probably a colorized version out there for you, Stolp. It's considered one of the American classic movies. And I'm not going to do a whole long report on the movie, but basically there's a guy who lives in a nice community called Bedford Falls, and he runs into some trouble and is contemplating suicide. And then his guardian angel shows up and talks him out of suicide. And the protagonist, George Bailey, says, yeah, I guess you're right. I should kill myself. That would be hard on my wife and kids. I'd probably be better off the world would be better off if I hadn't been born. And so the guardian angel shows him what life would have been like if he hadn't been born. And this guy, kind of like you, Stolp, did a lot of nice things for other people. And the world was much worse off if he hadn't existed. And in the alternate reality, this nice bedroom community called Bedford Falls becomes Pottersville. And in Pottersville, it's like capitalism on steroids. It's strip clubs, and there's streetwalkers and crime and gambling and all this. And I feel like where pickleball is headed, and this is regardless of whether PPA prevails or MLP prevails, is in that direction. It's going to be a harder edged sport like other professional sports. And in my sport, track and field, performance enhancing drugs are extremely common. And I assume that will be the case in pickleball as well. In fact, there's already rumors that some players are using PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, and gambling is coming into it. And, now it's still small enough that I could go up to Ben Johns or Anna Lee at a PPA tournament and say, hey, can you make this video for my friend who just had surgery? And they're like, sure, and it's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
It will not be that way in 5 years as the sport monetizes and professionalizes. And, these athletes, they're taking advantage of the current situation, as they should. I want them to have comfortable lives and be able to afford a home and whatnot. But it's going to change them, when it becomes your job. I think they're going to approach the game with a little less joy. And I think we're actually starting to see that. Like, I remember when Anna Bright burst on the scene, and she just had so much verve and joy. And now it's like only been like a year and a half, but she's become, I think, a bit more deadened, a bit more robotic. The pro pickleball that I enjoy the most, to the extent that I enjoy watching pro pickleball, is actually the senior pro. I find them to be more relatable. I think that most of those guys have other jobs, like Althoff Merchant. You probably don't know who he is, but he just turned 50.
I do.
50. He loves pickleball, right? Like, he loves playing pickleball, and it comes across in the way he plays, like the way we play. When people watch us play in that video we made a few months ago, a couple of the commenters said, well, it's clear you guys really enjoy it. And that's what I like to see when I watch pickleball, is people really loving it. And so, yeah, I fear that a bit of that will be lost. But it's inevitable. We live in a capitalist system, and this is the natural course of events.
Dang, Jesse, that is just wonderfully well said. Tim, as you hear Jesse talk about Pottersville, does it make you worry about Pickleville? Are we going to lose the sanctity of our sport down at our level as the upper echelons get corrupted and twisted into strip clubs and streetwalkers?
Yeah, I feel pretty insulated by what's happening at the top levels, and I have a hard time imagining that ever changing. Despite all the money that's going into the pros and PEDs or whatever happens to transpire going forward. That's a little bit shady. Maybe that's naive on my part, but I also understand that there's no controlling it. Like, I don't have that kind of influence. So what's going to happen that has already happened to other sports is probably going to happen to pro pickleball, and it just is what it is. So I'll just keep playing and making sense of things as things develop, and doing the best that I can.
Well, for my closing thoughts, I don't want to cut you guys off, but these are my closing thoughts on the matter. I am very bearish on how it's going to eventually get down to impacting us. Because think about when Jesse, you and I had the spin serve, and they just like bunch of the rules committee got together in a room, I believe, allegedly led by Simone Chargin. She didn't like it, and so she led the push to get that thing banned. And I thought I loved that part of the game. Now I've gotten a lot better since, and having the spin serve eliminated forced me to grow the rest of my game. But that was at the top level, and it trickled all the way down to us. Now, Steve Kuhn wants team play, and he wants rally scoring to 21. I fear that's going to trickle down. And as much as I am intrigued by the team events, and Tim mentioned he and I are going to be hosting 2 of them over the course of the next 2 months. And we haven't done it yet, but I'm very excited. Everyone's jazzed up. I think it's going to be really good. I don't want to be forced. I don't want my hand to be forced to say, okay, well, here's the new rules, Ian, you have to play by, and now it's rally scoring, when I love the strategy of, if it's your serve or if you're being served on, you have to be more defensive, and the strategy, the shots that you can take. So how it comes to line calls, I don't know. A lot of it, I'm watching it, one, because I'm more interested in the pros than you guys. I'm not a diehard fan at all, but I at least kind of am in the know of what's going on. But I'm mostly paying attention to it because I don't like what's coming down the horizon. And maybe that's the negative, mini nihilist in me. But
well, you're a pickleball purist, and you'll be the pickleball old school guy. And this happened.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
And what's going to happen is sports evolve, and we're recognizing that right now. We're at this evolution point, and it happened with Major League Baseball, and it continues to happen. And it was addressing this length of play, and it was boring, and this and that. And so they put time constraints in it, and they have pitch clocks, and so the baseball purists, the old school baseball guys, right? I hate it. You're changing the game. And we're talking now they're bringing in robo umps where, robots get to call some of these things. So there's always going to be this debate of pickleball purity and old school versus the new school way. But people adapt to change. It sounds like, not everyone adapts at the same rate, but the game is going to change. And if we want to be at the top end of the amateur level, we have to adapt with it. And that's just a matter of fact, right? And so it's just like whatever these people decide and how we get there is going to be the way. We are going to have to adapt the same way you adapt to eliminate your spin serve, which, by the way, I would argue made your game better because you relied less on gimmicks and more on purity of play.
Listen, gimmicks, it took me a long time to learn that thing.
Fair. But it made you better in the long term. And so I think there will be this realization, even by the purists, to say, dang, I'm mad. And rightfully so. This is a change, but we're better because of it. And my hopeful, optimistic attitude as I approach everything in life is this is going to be better for the game. All of the monetization, all this type of, increasing the awareness of the sport of pickleball is going to be better for the sport long term. And that's the camp I sit in.
Awesome. Jesse, Tim, any final thoughts?
Well, I don't really understand what the spin serve. I don't understand your argument there. I mean, basically, you're mad that they took away the spin serve, but that has nothing to do with Steve Kuhn or Tom Dundon.
No, I didn't say their names when I referenced it. I said Simone Chargin. There were some pros who really didn't like it, and at the top level, at the very highest level, people were upset about it, and that ended up getting enforced all the way down the line. That's what I'm saying. It was a very small percentage. I mean, you don't like when it beats you, but there were a very small percentage of people who were just hell bent on going after it. And that was the end result of it.
Yeah. I'd say a lot of people didn't like the spin serve. Actually, it wasn't just a few pros, but it sounds like Tim made this point when we were talking about it the other day. He said, "Are you mad that because you don't like rally scoring, or are you mad because you don't like Steve Kuhn forcing rally scoring on us? Like, which is it?" And for me, like, I don't have problem with rally scoring. I played rally scoring once, and it was fun. But it does kind of bug me that Steve Kuhn gets to decide for the rest of us.
I would agree with that, and I've never played rally scoring. So guys, before we close out, I want you to give a grade. Hold up your hands as best you can in the shape of a letter, and give me your grade on the state of pro pickleball. Oh, Stolp's going to cheat with a piece of paper.
Wait, current state of pro pickleball?
The current state of pro pickleball. Give me a grade.
I'll go first. That's a freaking. Oh well, I'll go second.
It's a blank piece of paper.
I'll fix
Right
that.
here.
I'm with you. I'm with you, Ian.
C minus right here. What do you think, Timmy? Throw it up.
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to do something super clever here.
I'm back. Okay. Well,
no,
I'm
not.
You're not back, Stolp.
I can't see it.
Yeah, you can. You can see
I
it.
texted an F.
Very simply, put up your hand.
I can't. Okay,
you can't.
Follow instructions, bro.
I'll explain that F to my wife later. She just got a text with an F on it.
I got to think outside of the box here. Those are a handful of letter Z's because the state of pro pickleball right now is boring.
Oh my gosh! Well,
that is good.
Listeners and viewers, that last 45 seconds was a great picture into what we are like basically all the time when we're not filming. So thank you for joining us. Oh my gosh, laughing too hard for this episode of the PickleBros podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, follow us on all your podcasting platforms. So we love you all. Stay safe. Stay out of the kitchen.